Dylan Keel and Lars Hefner from Athens Music Now. We're coming to you hot with a new episode of On That Note, and it's a little different because we're not having a band here or a solo artist or anything like that. What would you guys call Athens Music Now?
Athens Music Now is a nonprofit organization, sort of a community project that Dylan and I came up with. Really, I guess we started talking about this in January of 2023. The goal and point being to offer free music business workshops to people in the community. I think that is something that, well, I mean, you can probably take it from here. You had a lot of people coming into the shop asking specific questions.
Yeah.
Classic City vintage guitars, by the way.
That's right. So I've got the guitar shop and I have young people coming in, new kids come in every year and they move to Athens and they want to be part of the music scene. And how do they get started? Who do they talk to? How do they find open mics to play? Do you know a music business lawyer? Do you have these connections? Things like that. And so the idea kind of came, from the idea that information should be free and accessible in a community like Athens. When I was in music business classes at Murray State University 10 years ago, we would have lecturers come in from Nashville. And at the end, the reason I dropped out of the music business program was they would kind of tell their story, talk about what they did. And at the end, they would say, so where do you guys think the music business is headed? Because at the time, the music business in Nashville was looking pretty bleak. Studios were closing and, the Pirate Bay, music pirating was really popular at the time. And so they were basically like, so how do you guys think we're going to get paid? And of course they didn't see TikTok coming or Spotify coming or all of these other things. So now that there is a new music business and a new kind of template for success and things like that, I think that in order for a community like Athens to remain an incubator of talent, which it has been for the past 40 years, we need to kind of prepare ourselves for the coming urbanization and the coming real estate crisis. A big part of why musicians have moved here for a long time is because of cheap rent, Right. And so in the last however many years, wages haven't changed much, but rent has. So yeah.
That's all. I mean, I'm glad you guys came up with this idea, Dylan. We've mentioned it to me a few times over the last couple of months about coming on the pod, and you're like, we got something really excited, but I can't tell you yet. And I'm like, well, whenever you're ready, come on the pod, we'll talk about it. So I'm excited to be, getting into all the issues. I got a bunch of questions and stuff like that. But first, let's mention the album that you chose. You actually brought over. It's Wim Tapley, friend of the pod, live at the Georgia Theater on vinyl. And I love that you got his signature on here as well.
Good move.
What made you pick this album? Obviously, Wim is a friend. He's a great friend, and he's a friend of the pod, and he's a great musician. But you said, in a way, he also is a bit of a catalyst for Athens Music Now.
Sure. Wim is Athens Music Now. He is a young artist who moved here to go to college. Very quickly, within the first week of me opening the shop, Wim had just moved here. And I have a YouTube channel called Classic City Limits. And I had accidentally double booked Spencer and Wim, who are both Athens artists. And
I heard about this.
And afterward, we're sitting around talking, and Wim says to Spencer and I don't think that being in school is right for me right now. I think I want to pursue music. And we encouraged him. I told him, college will always take your money, but you're young now.
I thought you were going to say college will always be there to go back to.
It will,
but,
well,
and it will be there to take your money.
Institutions will, but if you're going to have that kind of, burning on your back, that urge and always thinking I should be doing this, then you should go ahead and pursue it. And you can always go back to school. If he were in his third year. Of course, I wouldn't have encouraged that,
Just finish, right.
But, and Spencer had the same advice, and Spencer's, pretty seasoned, so he called me. Of course, he talked to David Barbe and talked to some people who were more, better resources than the guy at the guitar store, And so he called me later.
He's collecting his information across.
Yeah, which I'm glad he did, because I'm gonna be like, go rock and roll, kid. But he got some real advice from some real musicians, who've lived it, and they told him the same thing. So he called me later, or came by the shop later and said, yeah. So I just went ahead and dropped out, And so watching Wim grow through the last 2.5 years has been amazing and inspiring, And so he just recently released this Live at the Georgia Theater record. It was released in print, or it was pressed at Echo Base, which is a local distribution and record plant, So there's a lot of Athens ties there. The Georgia Theater, there's Wim, there's Echo Base. And so I really thought, he just released it last week, and we're about to do a giveaway at the shop for a free ticket to the show next week that he's playing at Georgia Theater on Saturday. And I thought it really just, really tied the room together to bring Wim Taffley.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to have a previous guest on the pod, their album up here. So thanks for bringing it. Shout out to Wim. I'm sure he's listening. I did want to ask about, where this idea came from. I know we've already talked about it a little bit, but also if you could explain maybe the process of from conception to execution now that we're really getting Athens Music Now off the ground floor. We have your first presents session with another friend of the pod, David Barbe, in a couple weeks, Sunday, January 28th, correct?
Yep, that's right.
At Hendershots.
Hendershots.
Very exciting. And it's free, which is awesome.
Free, of course.
Yep.
But yeah, maybe you could take me from conception to where we are right now, how you got here, the process of it, maybe some of the challenges and how you overcame those challenges, etc.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think...
Also, would you mind bringing up that microphone stand is kind of, it falls the whole time.
How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, good deal. I think honestly, the concept initially was Dylan's, really because of your experience with people like Wim or, AG or like whoever was coming into the shop and hanging out. And you were kind of looking for somebody, I think, to do it with. And our good friend Brandon Lord came into the shop and was talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, you should call Lars Hefner."
Sure.
And he did. I guess the next day.
No, immediately. It was. I texted you immediately.
Speed dial.
Yeah. And I was like, "Cool, man. Let's meet up and talk about this." And Dylan is obviously a very passionate person, and this is important to both he and I, individually, but also together. And as soon as he started talking to me about like what he wanted to do, I was like, let's do it, fully on board. So you should talk more about, where it came from for you.
Yeah. So, I'm my parents were in the music business, as songwriters. And I have always kind of had, uncles, in Nashville. Every guitar player, is an uncle or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of like had, a little bit of music business connection, not so much the business side of it, more so just being around players and seeing and hearing experiences from within the music business in Nashville. Mostly like, not the greatest stories, not the most, I'm going to go be a rock star now,
Right.
Like, so...
The dark side of that, I guess.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like I found my way into being behind the scenes as a luthier and having a guitar shop because I really appreciate a connection to music and musicians. And that's my passion is probably about 50-50. I love guitars. I love vintage guitars, but I love having a connection to music and a connection to musicians, And so being in Athens and coming here in 2020, I saw a lot of things that seemed alarming to me. Things like everybody seemed to, it's a town that's very retrospective, everything was better 10 years ago, And so thinking, about the future in Athens and all of the things that are coming, as far as the housing market, venue closures, real estate downtown, the possibilities of new venues opening because of the real estate downtown. And I kind of I was thinking, like, what about, starting something that's a community conversation? What if we just had everybody in a room and we had, questions, right? Like, and just talked. Like if we had, members of the Athens music community who are going to be here for a long time, and just kind of talked it out, but at the same time, I had young musicians coming in, and asking me, hey, like, do you know a music business lawyer? I've got some questions, or do you know this and that and this, and I didn't, I didn't really know who to send them to other than David Barbe, who is not only the head of the Invest department, but he is a seasoned Athens musician and has, connections. He knows everybody in town. And just thinking about, him being the only resource to send people to, how overwhelming that would be for him if everybody just went to David,
Right. Here's 25 people.
Right. Yeah. And he, he's a lecturer at the college and he does a lot of work, very active in the scene, and that is with the Invest department, it's through the college. So for people who aren't in college, cause not everybody chooses that path. Some people, are moving here to just play music and to be in a music scene. Another thing that I heard a lot about was venue closures. You should have been here when Max Canada was here. Right. You should have been here for Go Bar. A lot of talk about Caledonia and the loss of that space.
All of those I missed.
Yeah.
Such a bummer.
Same here, very much so.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
And so the original conversation with me reaching out to Lars, I had talked to Brandon Lord, who's a mutual friend, and about how do we open a venue? How do we find a way to open a venue amid all of this, not having access to, money or things like that? How do we organize a community thing where we can also open a venue, have this conversation and things like that? So, of course, I reached out to Lars, and we started meeting a year ago, around this week.
Yeah.
It's been around a year, and we meet we started meeting on Wednesdays, but we decided that, because we both work full time, and we were trying to get this together, and we both, have partners, Wednesday should be date night. So after about 6 months, we started doing Thursday nights.
Collectively.
Yeah. But so we've been meeting for a year on this. We have miles of meeting minutes that we've kept records on, and we've incorporated, and we've slowly had conversations with a lot of people in the community just to kind of curate some ideas and understanding about what do you guys want to see happen? What do you think needs to be done? What's your perspective on it? Because, Lars and I don't have the answers at all. We have an idea of how to organize people and collectively try to solve the problems that we're facing as a community, a music community.
Right. Yeah. And that's the whole point, being like, we're not the people, like, we're not trying to give the answers. We're trying to, it's starting a discussion. And I think that the unique thing about it is, rather than have these people come and, teach the community necessarily, it's more of a discussion where, and I hope that the people presenting can also learn something from the people that they're presenting to.
Yeah.
So it's a very, the idea for it to be very communal and everybody to sort of come away feeling more in touch. I don't know. It's, I think it's a very communal thing.
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like at the end of the day, it is forming a community and allowing there to be a space for people who have been here for a long time and have seen what Athens was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and to see where it is now, who have also been involved in the music industry, have them be able to weigh in on what things are like now, what things could be like in the future. But at the same time, someone like that might not have quite the on the ground perspective as like someone like a Wim Tap.
Right. Well, you can't sell tickets to a show for $5 anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to have like the meeting of those two types of people, I guess,
And another thing with that, Lars and I moved here in 2020, and Lars has been here for what, 6 years?
Yeah, I came here in 2017 right after I finished college.
Yeah, and so another big question people might ask is like, why are you guys doing this? You're not even, you haven't really even been part of this music scene for a long time. And for me, living in Nashville before this big change in Nashville and seeing that kind of happen and overtake that kind of very small music community. It's a big music community. There's a lot of famous people there, of course, but Nashville used to feel like a very small town, and then moving to Northern California and living there before the legalization of marijuana and seeing how that economy changed the culture of the community, right? And so when you have money, interest, and people moving into a community in large waves, there is a change, and so I kind of wanted to think with some foresight, like, what can we do to kind of preserve some things that we want to keep, keep preserved in this community.
What are those things you think are very important to preserve and keep around here?
Well, I mean, if having talked to some of the people that we've talked to that were around in like the 80s and the 90s, the heyday of Athens, there's been a lot of discussion about how they created the community that became so famous. And it was very, pulling up the bootstraps and, doing it, themselves. I mean, the first iteration of 40 Watt was literally an apartment building downtown, like near where the Chick-fil-A is. And it was the 40 Watt, my understanding at least, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. But it was the 40 Watt because of a single light bulb in the ceiling, and it was just a house show space, For the most part, I don't feel like those kinds of things are happening anymore. Not to throw any shade anywhere or anything like that, but two of the biggest venues in town are represented both by Live Nation and AEG, and so there's obviously a vested corporate interest there in places that historically have been, for the most part, independent venues, and able to represent so many of the famous bands that you consider when you think about Athens, and it's just not quite happening that way anymore. For a number of reasons. And not that we have the answers and the immediate solutions, but we want to have a discussion, and hopefully somebody that we, get on board does.
Yeah. And kind of raise our hands and just say, this kind of seems like a problem. If the punk community has been displaced since the loss of Caledonia, things like that, there's not a home. There's a home for indie rock. There's a home for larger bands, at 40 Watt in the Georgia Theater. We've, heard talk of Athens Clark County working on a 10 to 15 cap larger venue, also larger festivals. There was also an effort pre-COVID for an amphitheater in Athens.
2 of them.
So it seems like there's a lot of interest in very large productions and to bring in larger acts. But what's the focus on the Athens community music scene? Because people are still moving here to be musicians, and there's still the thing that we want to preserve the most is Athens' ability to be an incubator for talent, to be able to start out here playing open mic night, you know what I mean, at Hendershots or wherever, and grow as an artist and eventually see yourself on the stage at the Georgia Theater or at the 40 Watt, and it can happen quickly because it's a small community. But you can literally start your freshman year playing music in Athens and play, 60 shows a year if you want. You just get out, you play, and and then by the time you move away, if you're going to move away, or by the time you're ready, you're seasoned. It's an incubator. It's a great place for that. And so I think that is the most important thing to preserve, that kind of culture where you can live, you can go to school if you're going to school, but you can grow and have a community that surrounds you and supports that growth.
Yeah. I love Athens for that reason already, that it does feel like a bit of an incubator. I mean, the reason why I moved here was because, you think Atlanta, it's a big city, it's going to have a big music scene. And in a way it does, but it's also very spread out, and it was hard for me to know where to go.
Sure.
And maybe some of that was on me for not like going out all the time, trying to figure out what to do. But in Athens, it's very centralized, and the community is very strong, and everybody's supporting each other. At least that's what it's felt like for me. So it's cool to see that not only do y'all and a lot of other people recognize that, but you want to continue it, make it grow more. And I think it's a very awesome thing that everything is so centralized. Like, you know exactly where to go. But you're right. It sounds like before I moved here, there was even more spots you could go, and now they're on the decline. You know, do you feel like, what are some things that we can do as a community to help bring those types of venues back?
Support the venues that are left. You know what I mean?
To start with, yeah.
Yeah. Because the ones that are downtown that are there and established, and the ones that have closed, and are the ones that are threatened right now, are threatened because of rising rent cost. You know what I mean? And so that the opportunity for corporations and franchises and things like that to move in that's the threat. You know, if people are questioning, like, well, what are you guys worried about? You know, there was my wife is a GIS technician for the state of Georgia, and she showed me this map that was released by Esri that makes, you know, predictions of maps. And the urbanization growth map for Esri of Athens, Clark County over the next 20 years is ridiculous. It goes from this little spot of red, which is what we know of Athens. And I think of urbanization as like concrete on the ground. You know what I mean? And then so it shows this sprawl just is huge. And likewise, the New York Times and several other news articles or news resources released an article just a few weeks ago, that shows 10 cities you won't be able to afford to live in 10 years. And Athens was number 2 on the map.
Whoa.
And the predictions showed that, and you can look it up. It's in the internets. You can look it up. You know, it's like, it shows that the housing values double over the next 8 years.
Wow.
Double. So if your house is worth, and this is going to be great for people who have big fancy houses,
right?
But for people who are musicians in Athens, still renting, and want to stay here,
what do you do?
What do you do? It shows, all of those costs doubling. So that's, to me, that's the threat. Do
you think some of that is just the fact that Georgia has like won so much in football, and it's like, 2 national championships in a row, and like
I think it's definitely university influence in that sense. Certainly so. I mean, I think statistically UGA owns like the majority of downtown itself.
Sure.
A lot of that space is influenced by the university and attendance and rising costs of tuition and everything else when it comes to property taxes. So yeah, I mean, the better they do, the higher property taxes are, the more rent is going to be and everything else. So yeah, most certainly.
Do you know if there's been any like talks with the university about how to kind of mitigate some of that?
I'm sure somebody has tried. I don't know specifically, but if you're a large, university like that, your primary goal is to make the money. Course, it's like that's not your interest.
And developers as well. People see progress in a community as development. You know what I mean? How fast is it growing? How fast is tourism growing? So for a city like Athens, the tourism is built into the football, right? And the music scene. So it would make sense to me to bolster the local music scene as much as anything else.
Right.
And there seems to be a lot of retrospective kind of efforts and money put into remembering the past Athens legacy rather than making that legacy something that continues. You know what I mean? How much does it cost to put bronze picks in the sidewalk? I've heard it's about $10,000 a piece. Don't quote me on that, but
still, I mean, it's definitely not a small number.
Could that money be used to help support local musicians or support local venues, or to provide a community center that
Give grants to local bands to do things like go on tour and press records and make merch and things like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And like make it known that it is an Athens band and you are repping Athens as you tour the country.
Right.
Yeah. So really, I think, just having this conversation within the community locally, like how should our tax dollars be spent?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to see, I was talking to somebody about this a few weeks ago and they said, wouldn't it have been great if they took all that bronze and just made a statue of Vic Chestnut where that Confederate monument was that got taken down?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Athens has a sense of humor, and not that that's at all funny, but, it also has, you see bumper stickers that say like Athens, Georgia, I can't afford to live here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've got the postcard at my shop that says, hope you break even on tour. You know what I mean? So,
right.
so Athens has a way of like,
we all.
of recognizing
Yeah.
itself and seeing those kind of like, those question mark moments,
Mm-hmm.
But it is worth it. It is worth going on tour, even if you break even, it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth staying here and not moving to Atlanta because there's a bigger music scene there, or because there's a community of, of whatever genre you play.
Right.
It's bigger and more welcoming, But the big problem is, wages aren't really changing that much.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we, and I'm not suggesting that we have rent control here, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Something's
At least starting the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah,
Like I said, we don't have the answers, but
Right.
and if any of these
But we want to help
conversations,
find them. We want to facilitate the conversation that finds the answers,
Right.
and if any of these conversations upset anybody, then they're definitely worth being talked about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then please
true.
come talk to us.
Yeah. Or come to our every fourth Sunday of the month at Hendershots. Seth is allowing us to have they're not usually open on Sundays, but because there aren't typically concerts on Sunday nights in Athens,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good night for people to come and sit and have an open conversation after a lecture, and there will be a Q&A.
Cool.
And then we're also going to be podcasting the lectures.
Cool.
Which
Nice.
is
We'll record
important
and release those as well, yeah.
important for people who have moved away from Athens or still have an interest in
Totally.
Athens.
Or just they're gonna miss one.
Sure.
They're just gonna miss
'Cause they're
one
on
of those
tour.
nights.
Or they want to
'cause they're
revisit
on
it for
tour.
whatever reason,
Exactly. Yeah. That's so smart. And they're gonna be like 3 hours long, right? 6 to 9.
Well, doors are at 6.
Okay.
The speaker will begin at, we're going to introduce the speaker, and then they will come up, and we will basically have a conversation with them and help direct the conversation for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then there will be a question and answer session
Cool.
with the speaker. And then we're going to open questions up just to the floor about Athens Music Now, or concerns that musicians or community members are having, just to keep it open. And somewhere around 9:00 it'll end. It's not going to be. We wouldn't want anybody to feel like they needed to speak for 3 hours.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
It's
gonna
gonna
be a long time.
Daunting, yeah.
Yeah, we
Daunting.
really want people to show up.
I'm sure
and
Barbe could do it. It wouldn't be a problem for him.
Positive me of all people could do it, yes.
I think I was telling you earlier, Parker, Barbie's podcast with you was one of the most interesting podcasts I've
Without
ever
a
listened to.
Dude,
Because
thank you.
I was stopping every few minutes and looking up whatever he was talking about.
Yeah.
Which is such a great use of having the internet these days. Just being able to like pull up that album or that picture that he's talking about, and it really made it super interesting. But yeah,
Hell yeah. I'm
David
glad you
is
enjoyed it.
such a great resource to have in the community. And he was also the first person that we sat down with. Lars and I had been meeting for about 3 months. We had about 20 pages typed up. And I basically said to Lars, like, okay, well, if Barbe says this is a terrible idea, then that's it.
Right, and he didn't. There was
Yeah,
kind
he
of, I
didn't.
think when we got ready for his response, there was kind of like a long pause and maybe like a chin rub kind of thing.
Sure.
And we're like, oh shit, what is he going to say?
Right.
And he was like, I think this is a really good idea. So here's my points. Here's my critiques.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, excellent. This is
Whoa. So, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the ideas he threw in there that maybe you feel like really shaped what Athens Music Now has become?
Well, one being sort of like, instead of it being like a class, like somebody attending the MBUS program and just like getting like a lecture more or less. I think making it like sort of like an open floor kind of thing, like we're talking about, and like us moderating, like more having a conversation with him and like everybody, proceeding instead of, somebody pulling up with a PowerPoint and speaking from the PowerPoint and saying, take notes.
Yeah, totally.
So more of just like a community effort to, again, like have a discussion. So
keep it engaging.
Right.
He was also very interested in the idea to open a venue or to find solutions for venues because, of course, there, I have heard stories, and we've all heard stories about all the venues that were here 10 or 20 years ago, and how few there are now. You guys know how few venues there are now. So he was very interested in that. And so we just had a discussion, and we've met with David, I think twice since. And it's always very refreshing to have somebody who is as passionate as we are about helping the music scene,
right.
because he has been in the trenches for so long.
Yeah.
David for me is a big part of the reason that I came here in the first place.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think my junior year of college, my undergrad, which would have been 2015, somewhere in there. I came to Athens to meet him with the intention of going to grad school here and talk to him about the MBUS program. Met him through a mutual family friend. And he was kind enough to sit down and meet with my brother and I for probably about, at least an hour, maybe a little over, and, sort of gauge our interest in the music scene here, working in the industry and all those kinds of things. And by the end of it, he's just like, make the jump, just come do it. And honestly, finish school and don't do it again.
Wow.
Just play, work, figure it out.
Yeah. He is a big proponent for just figuring it out.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I feel like that's what we've been doing. It's the reason we came here. So shouts out David Barbe.
Yeah. Another person we talked to that was very helpful was Dick Daniels with Nucci Space.
Is he the owner?
No. Dick Daniels, I believe, is he's a board member. I believe he's the president of the board now as of this year.
Yeah.
Because one of the questions that we had, among us was, how will people in the community perceive us beginning another nonprofit? Because we don't want to take anything away from Nucci Space mission, which is extremely important. Their mission is, of course, suicide prevention, and they do have a lot of resources for musicians. And so how do we start something that works with the other or another music-focused nonprofit organization within this small community? Because we are going to be fundraising and things like that, but we don't want to affect their mission. They are a template for how to make a nonprofit work. They are a huge success, and we really admire everything they've done for the community. So the first thing that we wanted to do, because Dick is a client and a friend of mine at the guitar shop, and so I asked him if he would sit down with us. And one of the things that he said was, I know you guys have a lot of passion about venues and what to do about this and how to do it, but I think that your lecture series is the best way to start because it's action based. Before you start trying to get donations or trying to do any fundraising, concerts, things like that, begin with action. And that was huge because we were kind of like gearing up to do a fundraising campaign to try to figure out, because honestly, Lars and I, we work our butts off and we don't really have the kind of money or resources to just throw into things like this.
Well, to do all the things we want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because admittedly we have some very big ideas, which is the great thing about working, together on this is, it takes big steps and takes big action to do things like this and to come together as a community and to really provide help,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, Dick's advice was a big reason why we're leading with the lecture series, because we have many other ideas but it just made sense to begin with action and begin with a conversation and have community involvement.
Some of the best advice we've gotten so far, I think.
Absolutely.
We were like, whoa, that makes perfect sense, man. Why didn't we think about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it does make sense to have the name out there and do the things and already be giving to the community so that when the time does come to do something a little bit bigger, everybody already knows who you are and they know that you are in this for the right reasons and then they're happy to support.
Sure.
What have been some of the challenges of getting Athens Music Now to where it is? And what have been some of the rewards that you feel like you've experienced?
Paperwork being probably the
Really?
biggest,
Lots of paperwork.
Yeah.
But honestly, I would say like we have not even begun yet. Our first lecture is next in 2 weeks.
Right.
So we're just trying to create awareness and get people to show up. That's our first challenge to fill Hendershots on the 28th on Sunday.
Yeah.
And have a real conversation with a lot of community members. As far as the work that we've done, we're hoping that the community supports that effort and that we hope that that's not the big challenge. Getting the community to support it because it's not for us. But we are going to be here. I have a home here and I have a business here, and I don't see myself leaving Athens. So I want to see this community be the kind of place that people hear about and come here for.
Right.
Yeah.
Where would you like to see Athens Music Now in 5 years? I know it's kind of a lofty question.
I know where I would like to see Athens in 5 years.
Yeah, let's do that.
I would like to see Athens have a couple mid-sized venues. I would like for people not to be apathetic about changes and be willing to face them head on. Because a lot of our friends have kids and they're going to grow up here and be part of the music scene. We, as an organization or as a nonprofit, we hope to still be providing free education for local musicians to grow within. You know what I mean? The idea is for everyone to have the same groundwork as far as knowing how to negotiate a contract.
Yeah, just creating an even playing field across the board with no paywall,
Yeah. And so for us, it's not so much about where we see Athens Music Now, but where we see our community and where we see musicians here. We just want to see everybody healthy and thriving. As far as the lecture series go, it's kind of like access to healthy food. We feel like everybody should have access to healthy food. In the same mindset, for Athens to be a healthy music community, everyone should have free access to an understanding about how to thrive as a musician, because it's hard enough just to get up there and sing your songs. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of guts, and so we just want to help them do that.
Yeah, and how many musicians don't necessarily even have an interest in the business side of things, let alone even if they do, like, have the knowledge or the resources or the wherewithal to figure out how to do something like negotiate a contract or like what it's like to work with a label, or even just, what do I do if I want to play a show? How many people don't even know where to start with that?
Right.
Well, really, it's easier now than ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To distribute your music.
Yeah.
To all of those things are accessible. To reach out, Instagram's a huge way of being able to find somebody and reach out to them because it's very accessible. So really, there are things that make it easier now than ever, and there's things that make it harder than ever, because it's an abyss,
Right.
Well, as access to information evolves, so does the industry itself, in a lot of ways preying upon people who may not, know whatever specifically is being talked about when it comes to a contract or like an offer or something like that. So, for my own sake personally, I also hope to, take something away from this and learn something
Sure,
I didn't know
absolutely.
before. I mean, there's a lot of benefit to me and to you and, you know, every single person that attends. So
Yeah.
It feels like overall it's a win-win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah.
definitely.
I love that. Do you guys want to announce any other guests that you guys are coming up, or you want to keep it on the low for now?
Maybe we keep it on the low for now. We're
Yeah,
kind of,
we're still working on it. We have our second speaker, and we're trying to keep it 2 months out.
Okay.
Because people's schedules change,
Totally.
especially with musicians and professionals.
That's a big ask for some of these people, for sure, to come and
It
donate their
is,
time,
yeah.
you know?
But we have bigger names in the community that we want to work up to. There are some very, very, very successful people in the music industry in Athens who have done very big things that are here, and we want to be part of this. But we want to show strength and show community and show them that that their peers are coming, and they should too, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And if anybody wants to follow you guys to make sure that they can be up to date on when all these presents sessions are coming up, where can they find you?
Athens Music Now on Instagram. We also have an email, info@athensmusicnow.org.
That's right.
If you have any questions or just, like, you know, want to reach us personally, I'm happy to share cell phone numbers or personal emails or
Sure.
anything past that. So
We also have a website that should be up within the next 2 weeks, www.athensmusicnow.org. And we have a Facebook page as well. Yeah,
Cool.
come if you want to talk to us. If you have any questions, show up every fourth Sunday at Hendershots 6 to 9. We won't be doing March because of spring break and Easter holiday, but we will be doing every month unless otherwise.
thereafter, yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, yeah, y'all go hit them up, follow them on IG and Facebook and all that. We usually end with a little last five. I know this is a little different because you're not a band, but I think we should still end with the last five, where you guys just pick 5 quick questions out of this bowl here, and we'll answer.
Okay.
So question number 1.
You go first.
All right. Oh, God. I've got unexpected musical influence.
This is a tough one to start with, too.
Yeah. For me, honestly, I guess the best answer I could give to that is that my brother and I grew up in Mississippi. We're both from Jackson, Mississippi, or around Jackson, Mississippi, and you know, once you start to get out of the Jackson area, you get to like places like Bentonia, Mississippi, and Yazoo, and everything around that, until you get to around Oxford and Clarksdale, and you know, places like that. When I was like 15, my dad started taking my brother and I to like all these blues markers in Mississippi and hanging out with what would now be considered some pretty famous hill country blues musicians, like the Kimbrough families, like Junior Kimbrough.
Oh, whoa. Yeah.
The Burnside family, like Earl Burnside, T. Model Ford, whose grandson that he raised, Stud, used to live with us as well. So, you know, Will and I, for probably, I would say, about 5 years there, by the time we were 15, we're hanging out with a lot of these guys. And we, in fact, had a 2-piece band doing hill country style guitar and drum work called the Hefner Brothers for a long time. So I would say that, honestly.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool as hell.
Pretty wild stories, maybe that I could tell you another time.
Hell
It would
yeah.
take a minute,
Sure.
I think. But,
That's sick.
yeah, good times.
What about you, Dylan?
Greatest influence? Yeah. Man, when I was a kid, it was all about Nirvana. The first songs I learned to play on guitar were Nirvana. I was just a huge Nirvana fan. Before that, my parents wrote country music in the early 80s. So I grew up with a lot of like Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker Band. But I do remember when Out of Time came out, the REM.
Oh, yeah.
Or the REM tape.
Right.
And I remember, there's the songs that we know, but there are like songs that really stuck out to me, like the Radio song, which is just like a rap influenced kind of REM song, things like that. Guns N' Roses. There were a lot of like things that my mother listened to, but for me, not just music that I was around, things that really impacted me, Nirvana was it. I was that kid that had every magazine, poster on my wall. And just, in fact, I finally, a couple weeks ago, I finally just finished a dead-on copy, but right-handed, of Kurt Cobain's 1969 Competition Mustang.
Beautiful.
That he played in the Smells Like Teen Spirit video. So
Wow.
still a diehard Nirvana fan.
That's awesome.
So,
Ride or die. That's
it.
sick. Cool.
Right.
What's question number 2?
The question I pulled out was best, worst decade of music. I don't know, man. I hear T. Hardy Morris is working on an album right now. I don't think there's ever been a bad decade of music. It's always evolving. I am envious of. I have a client who I was talking to him today about how, when he was a teenager and he saw Bill Haley and the Comets, he did his hair like that. And then when Sweethearts the Rodeo, the Byrds record came out, how it blew all their minds. So I do envy guys that are in their 70s right now who saw that change.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do feel for us, the only thing that really has changed in the last 10 years is the shock value that has come out of music. Songs like WAP, or is that how it's pronounced?
Right.
Things
Yes.
like that. Like, that's definitely like, whoa,
Right.
But is that better music? But I love music from every decade. I really do. I'm a huge fan of 20s and 30s blues music and 40s Billie Holiday. I don't know. I don't know if that question's for me. I'm all about
I guess for me, I would probably say the 80s, but
For which one?
best. Oh, you mean, okay. See, I was thinking this as being like one decade being the best, worst decade.
Oh, no. One, like, which one do you think is the best? Which one do you think is the worst?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't say one is the best and one is the worst. My answer originally was going to be the 80s because, I think when you think about the 80s in general, you consider like a lot of hair metal bands.
Right,
definitely something I do not enjoy very much.
Right.
But there was also so much experimentation going on, like new technology and everything. It's like some of my favorite bands ever, 80s bands. Mm-hmm.
80s is a polarizing one because
Yeah.
to me, I say the worst, but only because what you just said about the hair metal.
Yeah.
But that was so popular,
Right, that being the point. But I mean,
then,
also you had
Tears for Fears.
Tears for Fears. You had Nine Inch Nails coming out and doing their
Dead
thing. It's
Kennedys,
like, Dead Kennedys.
Bad Brains.
Bad Brains, my God, like the heyday of punk,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
what became punk rock, one of my favorite things.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me,
It's an
I'm going to say,
impossible question, really.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's, well, my dad raised me when I was a kid. My dad was a musician for a long time, touring drummer, and he used to do this thing with me when I was probably like a preteen, maybe into my mid-teens, where he would make me sit down and we'd get on the computer and on YouTube at least once a day, sometimes twice a day, and he'd make me listen to 10 minutes of music that I think I don't like.
Oh, that's cool.
Just to expose me to it. And I remember the big breakthrough coming.
Shout
I was
out
probably
John
like,
Hefner.
oh yeah, great man.
That's awesome.
I was probably like 12 years old, and he was showing me John Hartford. I don't know if you ever listened to like Steam Powered Airplane Blues.
No.
Back in the good old days.
Oh my God, so
Such a good song.
banjo player, but banjo player, singer. He would do this bit where he would get up and finger pick banjo and tap dance at the same time and sing his songs, kind of like a one-man show.
What the hell?
Kind of bluegrassy, very folky, just a lot of influences all in sort of one place, and some legendary players on that record like Vassar Clements.
Sure.
Just incredible stuff. When he first showed it to me, I was like, man, this is about the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. This is like, what holler did you pull this out of?
Yeah.
And we must have spent about a month with it until there was a
That's
record
beautiful.
store down, probably about 30 minutes away from our house, called Little Big Store in Raymond, Mississippi. It was an old train depot that had been converted into a vintage record store. Very cool. And I went there for probably about 2 years, at least once a week, trying to find a copy of this record because it's so rare now. I mean, if you find one in mint condition, that thing's worth several $100s. It's pretty incredible. It's still to this day one of my favorite things in the world. So,
Did you ever get your hands on one?
no, I'm still looking. If anybody has a lead, please let me know.
Yeah.
I would love to have it. But best, worst, I can't really say. I think that there's something to be said for each generation and each wave of music.
Absolutely.
Whether I like it or not, there's something to be said for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Question number 3, I think.
All right, we've got best album covers.
Yeah.
I'm a huge record collector. I like the second time my now wife helped me move my record collection, I started shopping for rings. Like I am big record collection. And the reason that I got into collecting records when I was a kid was because I love that physical feeling of holding the art and the physical format and seeing it, having the gatefold where you open it up and reading the lyrics, it's such a tactile experience, and so for me, it's hard to say, but the one that stands out, and it's not just because of the cover, it's because of the inside of the jacket. Neil Young's On the Beach. There's a car in the sand, like the back end of the car is sticking out of the sand. Neil Young's there on the beach in a lawn chair, and there's a beach umbrella sticking out that has this crazy flowery pattern on it. And it's such a weird record cover, but then when you pull open the inside of the jacket, that same pattern's on the inside. And I've never seen anybody do that before. And I remember, the first time I saw that thing, God, that's so cool and thorough that he had that design printed on the inside too.
Wow.
So I think that's the one for me.
That's really cool.
I kind of have a dual answer here. I think my favorite is probably mainly because he's one of my heroes, but Iggy Pop's Raw record, where it's just like, the shot of him, like sort of the upshot of him on the microphone, big eyeliner, super sweaty, just, I had the good fortune of seeing him in 2015 at the Moody Theater.
Whoa.
Having freshly turned 69 and wearing leather pants, no shirt, and a moto jacket.
So sick.
Climbing a wall of speakers and dancing around like he was, 22 again. It was pretty incredible.
Sure.
So I love that. I used to have it framed on my wall just because I feel like it evokes a certain energy that I love.
Raw power.
It's like so good, man. I didn't say raw power. I said raw. Excuse me. The second part to that answer is probably when I was, I would say 10 or 11, I bought our Iron Butterflies record that includes In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Iron Butterfly is the band.
Iron Butterfly was the band. They recorded a song called In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida that's like
long, right?
it's like 13:47 or something like that, which is funny. The song is supposed to be the lore says the song is supposed to be titled In the Garden of Eden, but apparently the singer pulled up so drunk and just strung out that he couldn't say In the Garden of Eden, and it came out In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. And so that became the song. I bought this record at like a yard sale because it was all like psychedelic looking, and I was like, oh, this is really cool in my preteen brain. And I got it home, super excited to throw it on and figure out what the hell that was. And I was like, this song is 13 minutes long. This is going to be crazy. And I pulled the record out of the sleeves and put it on, and it was a George Jones record. And I was like, wow, this is not at all.
They got you.
Awesome, got you.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
But I like George Jones.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it could be worse.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
So what was the name of that? Iron Butterfly? Was the band?
Yeah, the band was in Iron Butterfly. I don't know if the record was In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida or like whatever it was, but probably it's something
definitely
like that.
A full side.
Yeah, it's literally, I mean, it's the whole
sick.
B-side is just the one song.
That's funny.
Yeah, or supposed to be.
Yeah.
I obviously don't have it. I have George Jones.
Right. Still got
Also,
it.
I want to say when Wim Tapley first showed me the album art for this, I said, Wim, have you ever seen the record Live Rust by Neil Young? Which, if you've ever, most Neil Young records at this time have this ring that he superimposed, but it's kind of a similar shot, and he'd never seen it, and he was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
I loved that he was able to kind of capture that, 40 years later, but also just being so thorough and as to make it look like an album that's been in a collection for a long time. It's got this ring around it. And, so I think this is a really great record cover.
Yeah, it's great. It's got kind of a vintage feel to it.
Shout out to Wim again.
Shout out again, Wim Tapley. He's my nephew. All right.
Question number 4.
Underrated artist at the moment. Have you heard of this band Hefner?
No, they sound familiar.
I gotta plug my boys.
I've only had them on the podcast twice.
They're pretty popular. They're pretty popular in Athens. I don't know. Really, who's an underrated artist at the moment? Are we talking about Athens Music Now?
It doesn't have to be Athens, but we've been talking a lot about Athens today, so why not?
I would say, since this is a local podcast, I want to shout out one of the newer artists in the community that I've heard. Julia Barfield. She's an incredible singer.
Yeah,
she has a lot of great influences like Blaze Foley. She does a really good job. So as far as my answer for the Athens Music Now podcast, I gotta say Julia
Barfield. Hell yeah.
I'm gonna say Snooki, fronted by our good friend
yes.
Thomas Kim.
It's
You know,
so
it's
good.
like I feel like when I first got here, there was a pretty prominent punk and hardcore scene, shows of which I used to go to all the time, and it's sort of I feel like it's finally coming back, probably partially by TK and like cohorts really trying to bring it back. But Snooki is just great, sort of classic hardcore, big like boneheady riffs, and it's a great show.
It is, and
I
it's
really like it.
When you see Snooki, it's such a rush.
Yeah,
because
I've actually never seen them.
It's so raw and powerful, and TK's I work
Great
with
front
TK
man, yeah.
at the guitar shop, and he's quiet and understated, but when he's behind
Different
that
person
mic,
up there.
he is
Isn't that how it
unleashed,
goes?
and it's so powerful. Their set, I think, is like 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's it's hardcore. It's like minute 30 songs, and they are like, at the end of it, if your heart is not beating out of your chest, like you're not paying attention.
Something's wrong with you. Yeah,
It's so good. They're
Whoa.
such a good hardcore band.
yeah,
That's
100%.
crazy. Okay,
Love them.
sick. Well, I have to catch a show. Absolutely.
By all means.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what this last question is.
I'm gonna pull this one. Let's see.
Number 5.
Put these back in. What's on your musical rotation?
Yeah, what you listening to?
I think for me, the most recent thing that I pulled out is what's the Breeders record? It's like green cover.
Last
Splash.
Yeah, Last
I was
Splash.
just talking about that with Honey Puppy.
Oh,
They were in here
yeah.
yesterday, and we were talking about
Yeah,
Last
Josie.
Splash and
Yeah,
Breeders.
I probably listened to that like 3 times in the last week. We have in my house at least, I think we have like 3 places where we have records and a record player, and we tend to just put those on. Me and Val, my partner, and I have a lot of records together. I guess that one being hers. But I pulled that out, and I've probably 3 times this week I've listened to it. It's great.
It is a great one.
Nice to revisit.
I was very late to the Breeders. I didn't get into them until last year, and it's still only that album. Really, that's really the only one I know.
That was the with Cannonball on it. That was
that was
the real popular
the song
one, right?
I first heard, and it was like, what the fuck? This is awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
The first time I went to Nucci Space, there were some Camped Amp bands practicing, and one of them was practicing Cannonball, and I thought, God, that's so cool. Because I turned 41 last week, so like
Happy birthday, by the way.
I remember when that song was popular
Wow.
the first time.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see alternative music, and even some of the like emo music that was popular when I was in high school coming back. And back then, like I didn't.
Like Sunnydale Real Estate and stuff like that.
Yeah, all of it. Just the idea, even like new metal. They're
Hey, I really fuck with Limp Bizkit, man.
it's
That's a great
amazing.
band.
It's just amazing to me. There's like a 20-year cycle always on music.
Yeah,
but
they come back.
some things that I listened to in high school, I was like, nobody's gonna listen to Limp Bizkit in 20 years.
Wes Borland's a genius.
Yeah. On my musical rotation, my wife is a really big fan of local Athens music. She's very tied into the community, and so she listens to a lot of Hefner. So I listen to a lot of very dark, black metal and hardcore music and punk and things like that. That's not always partner friendly. I listen to it when I'm working or when I'm driving. So when we're together, we're on a road trip. We listen to a lot of Clover County. Shout out AG.
Yeah.
We listen to a lot of about a lot of Whim. Both the kids send us the kids. Sorry guys. They send us tracks that they're working on, and we love that kind of insider look and the like. I don't know, just the connection to their music. We listen to a lot of Hefner as well. Hefner's put out some great records, and there's
Go stream Super Bowl 69. That album rules.
There's so many individual personalities in the band that if you listen to a record, it's hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
Reagan's got some great songs, and then Taylor's got some great songs, and you can always hear the individual influences in there. But yeah, I'd say we listen to a lot of local music, and that's always on our musical rotation, when we're together.
Love that. Cool. Well, Lars and Dylan, Athens Music Now. Thank you for coming on the pod, getting
Thanks
to
for
chat.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, yeah, it was awesome. Everybody needs to go to your first your presents Athens Music Now presents session at Hendershots, January 28th, Sunday night,
6 p.m., 6 to 9.
6 to 9.
Free to
David
attend.
Barbe will be there. It's free, so you have to be there. No excuses. Yeah,
That's right. And we do in the future hope to do some having shows, bringing bands in.
Hell
Athens
yeah.
Music Now presents whoever.
Yeah.
Y'all let us know like who you want to hear, who you want to come back to Athens, who you haven't seen in a while because maybe there's not space for them. There's a lot of bands that used to come through here. I've heard, and we want to see all those bands coming back.
absolutely. Give them a follow at Athens Music Now on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff, Facebook, website coming soon. Dylan, Lars, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again for tuning into the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Remember, not only can you listen to the episodes on Apple Podcast and Spotify, but you can also watch the episodes on my YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time.